2020. We're going to start out and call this meeting to order. I need a roll call, please.
Commissioner Stebbins,
Present.
Commissioner Hardy, Commissioner McCaskill, Commissioner Jordan, Commissioner Key,
Here.
Commissioner Ricks,
Present.
Commissioner Coney,
Present.
Commissioner Blauer, Commissioner Telga,
Present.
Commissioner McCaskill,
I think he's going to be joining us shortly.
Commissioner Jordan,
She wasn't here last time either. Has she been on since we've been? Can you check see how many meetings she's missed? Maybe we reach out to her.
we can do that. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, let me know. I'd be glad to reach out to her too.
Okay.
I asked for an adoption of the agenda, but I've got a couple things here, or one thing I wanted to talk about adding. This is the only municipal meeting I've ever taken part in or watched that there's not a Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of the meeting. And it may be I think it is appropriate. It's usually done in all municipal meetings, Flint and other municipalities, that we add that at the beginning of our meetings from here on out. Is there any reason, staff, any reason why we don't have that when I see it at all the other meetings?
This is Bill Vanderkirk. I'd have to refer to Assistant City Attorney Kelly Thompson.
Mr. Chair, this is Kelly Thompson. There's not a reason why we haven't done that in the past. I also am the staff attorney for Historic District Commission and Planning Commission. And since we've gone virtual, we have not done the Pledge of Allegiance, but that doesn't mean we can't do it now.
Right. Well, maybe why we're not virtual, but I'd like to add it into the agenda from meetings here on out.
That's just fine with me, Mr. Chair.
Yep. You guys can choose to participate or not. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with that correction or that addition?
I move that we approve the agenda with the correction or the addition. And it's Commissioner Ricks.
Do I have support?
Support.
All right. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed,
Aye.
same sign. Motion passes.
Commissioner Telga, I believe we have Commissioner McCaskill that just joined us.
Commissioner McCaskill.
Evening, everyone.
Hey, why don't you put at 6:05 you enter the meeting, please?
Entered into the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Bill, Commissioner Hardy was getting his computer unmuted when you were roll calling.
Okay.
So he didn't get a chance to say yes or hear.
Commissioner Hardy,
Here.
how did you vote on the adoption of the agenda?
Commissioner Hardy?
Go ahead, Keezy.
It was Commissioner Hardy.
Oh, Hardy. Okay.
Oh,
John?
You're still muted, Commissioner Hardy.
you had it done before.
Yeah, he's trying, but he's still muted on mine.
Yeah. There it is.
There we go.
Okay, we got it.
Repeat that.
John, we're just trying to record your vote on adoption of the agenda. We didn't get it.
Oh, it was, I approved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
We didn't hear it. We want to make sure you were right. We didn't want to assume. All right, approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, which are lengthy. Do we have any discussion on that before we get a motion?
I had a chance to read through them all. It is lengthy. And I see that we made sure we included, Bill, from our planner, included our reading of the standard questions that I read in. So that was much appreciated. So I don't have any objections or anything. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes of the last meeting.
Do I have support?
Good.
Support.
Anybody want to make any changes? I'd like to compliment staff in preparing such detailed and long minutes. It had to be a lot of work, I'm sure,
Thank
and
you.
listening and re-recording and playing it over again.
Casey and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. No, this is a lot of hard work. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we're going to go into the public forum. And John, can you read the rules for public forum and for conduct and how the public can participate, please?
Got John reading that, Matt?
No, I'm sorry, Jerry. No, I already asked you. Sorry, John.
Okay, you can stay muted, John, okay? I'll read it. Okay, rules of the public forum. The public will be allowed to address the zoning board of appeals on any item on the agenda. During this time, the speaker will address the zoning board of appeals. Speakers will refrain from the use of profanity, as well as any attacks on elected and appointed officials. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Failure to comply with any of the above rules shall result in the speaker being ruled out of order and informed that his or her time is up. Now, during the virtual meeting, please press *9 to raise your hand during the public forum to speak. And this is necessary in order for the Zoom administrator to unmute your phone. You want me to read public conduct during the public hearing too?
Yes, you can do it quickly, please.
All right. Public conduct during a public hearing. All speakers will address the zoning board of appeals and not the audience. Each speaker speaking in favor or opposing the matter will be allowed to speak once. If there are several individuals who would like to have one person be their spokesperson, the zoning board of appeals may at its discretion allow the spokesperson additional time. All speakers must refrain from any verbal attacks on elected and appointed officials, as well as against the applicant. All speakers will refrain from the use of profanity. Failure to comply with any of the above rules shall result in the speaker being ruled out of order and requested to sit down. And again, during the virtual meeting, please press *9 to raise your hand during the public hearing to speak. This is necessary in order for the Zoom administrator to unmute your phone. That completes that, Matt.
Thank you, Commissioner. Do we have anybody that wants to speak at this time in the public forum? And representatives from the case can speak when we open up the public hearing, a couple items down. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to close the public forum and move down to reports. Do we have any reports, staff?
No reports.
Communications.
There have been no communications, Commissioner Taliga.
All right, I'm going to open public hearing ZBA 20-2237 Clark Commons, and it has a rather long description, which I'd ask you to enter into the record, Bill, but I'm not going to read out. This is a setback variance for 5 buildings within Clark Commons project. It's a non-use variance, so Kelly, we just need a simple majority to approve this, correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, do we have the applicant here, please?
Yes.
Hey, welcome.
How are you?
Good,
Thank you.
thank you. You have the floor.
Okay. So yeah, we're before you in regards to 5 buildings of the 3rd phase of Clark Commons, which you may be familiar with. It is a larger project that consists of 3 phases. Phase 1 is currently under construction, and phase 2 is to begin construction soon also. in the project, we are looking to infill the neighborhood that borders Saginaw, Martin Luther King, Louisa Street to the south, and Mary Street to the north. The project includes a number of buildings, but in doing so, we're looking at trying to utilize as many of the vacant sites as possible to help complete the entire neighborhood where there are vacant homes currently or vacant lots. And so in doing so, there are a few lots that, as they exist, have relatively shallow lots or parcels in comparison to some of the others. And in order to be able to build on those sites and still maintain a front variance in relationship to the street, the distance from the rear of these buildings to the rear of the parcels is narrower or shorter. We think that these still can be well utilized lots as we've tried to put our smaller buildings or buildings with smaller footprints on these locations. The buildings that you'll see on block 3D, building number 29, those are single unit or single bedroom units. So they are on the smaller end of the project. And the buildings that you'll see located along Crosby and Mary Street, those buildings are 2-story, 2-bedroom units. So while they are 2 bedrooms, they are 2 stories. So again, they are shallower units, keeping them, trying to keep that in mind that they are shallow lots. Now, another thing is that while the space between the building and the rear of the parcel may be narrower, there is not a defined rear yard to each unit of the building. So it's more of a common rear yard. So they do have the ability to use the space to the left and to the right of them also, not just to the rear of them. We think that, I mean, because these are shallow lots, for development to happen on these lots in general and still maintain a front setback, it would require a variance in order to accomplish any type of building on the sites. So keeping those things in mind, we've tried to be mindful that they are narrow lots with our building design and unit selections for those locations.
I have a question, and I apologize in digesting this. I know we have 5 buildings. The ordinance says setback has to be 30 feet. Your minimum setback is 16.4. Is that on one building or all buildings?
So the overall, the minimum, or excuse me, the ordinance minimum is 30. Each building has a little bit of a difference as far as the distance. I believe the narrowest is the 16'4". That's building number 29 along Louisa Street. The other ones do vary. From I believe up to 25 feet would be the shortest, or I'm sorry, the largest variance, or the furthest distance from the building to the edge of the lot. So it's not that everyone is that narrow, but there are some that are more narrow than others.
Well, I would want, for the record, and I apologize, I haven't been able to pull this out of what I've given. For each building, I'd want to know what the setback is before I'd be willing to entertain a motion or approval.
If you have the package that was given
So on the
on sheet
elevation plan,
V101, there's an enlarged parcel plan or a block plan for
Looking at
each
right now. Thank you.
location. And there is a dimension from the rear of the building to the rear of the parcel.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, go ahead, John.
now this is Commissioner Key.
Oh, sorry. Jeez,
So-
I'm off today, Jerry.
Well, that's okay. I'm looking at I'm looking at all of the maps, the prints for the request. And I think
It just would have been easier if you said building 29 is this much, building 28 is that much, rather than referring me to the thing, which is what I was struggling with. Looks like 24.6.
I think building 47 on Mary Street has a minimum setback in the rear of 15 feet.
Yeah, I see that too.
Okay.
You
And
are correct.
I think,
Yeah.
I think that's the smallest one I see.
Right. Well, that's not 16.4 either, that we have in our pack.
We're talking about building 29. That's the variance we're discussing.
For all of them.
Well, all of them, really. Yeah, all of them, but you're right. Building 29 is the 16.4,
Yeah.
right? But
I got
building
it.
40,
So your goal, Mr. Copper Smith, is to
Yes.
have uniformity in the front of the house. So it looks like they're all set back about 20 feet from the curb. Is that right? Am I?
Correct. There's a 20-foot setback from the front. And then that's maintaining a street front, but it also allows for the drives to be in front of the homes and allow for off-street parking.
Parking, yeah. So it's about uniformity, yeah. And I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, it's important to know. I just, I want to know specifically what we're looking at approving or not approving. And each one's different. And it looks like in our packet, it says that the minimum is, in a narrative, it says 16.4. And as Jerry's pointed out, it's 15 foot, correct?
Correct. That was overlooked.
Yeah, it varies. Yeah.
yeah. Building, and this is Commissioner Key again, and I'm just looking at your prints and stuff, and I'm reading through this stuff, and I went through it. But it looks like building 47 had the smallest with 15 feet, and everything else was a step above that.
Correct.
Now, the question I have is, on the front setback of 20 feet, is that within our code?
30
Yes.
feet is 20 feet is
It's okay in the front.
30.
Okay. That's what my question was, as long, because I see we are consistently 20 feet in the front, but it's just the variance that's happening in the back of the units. And the smallest one I see was a 15. Everything else is a number greater than that, although it don't achieve 30.
Part of the reason that variance is asked for in the rear versus the front is for the parking. If the buildings were pushed further forward, you wouldn't have enough space for single cars for off-street parking. Also, it keeps those buildings in a similar location to the other homes that are existing in the neighborhood already.
Okay.
I'm sorry, applicant, we did kind of got off track and interrupted there. Did you want to continue, please?
I think I've touched on the items that we had to discuss.
So if you did say that the smaller units, the one-bedroom units, will be sharing a common space, correct? So the backyard really isn't that important if they're sharing a common green space somewhere, correct?
Well, so the individual buildings, what I was referring to is that so for instance, if we look at building number 29, there are 5 separate units in that building. And so the rear, right, and they each have their own individual patios, and the rear green space behind that is a common green space. It's not that each individual unit's green space is only directly behind its unit.
I've got a question on building 47, which is probably our largest concern, which is the 15-foot setback. I don't have a dimension here to know how far the patios are from the distance. How wide is each patio?
The patio extends from the building 8 feet and then is 10 foot in width.
So that's 7 foot from the property line. Okay. Before we go any further, guys, I need to open up public hearing and see if there's anybody here that would like to speak for or against this project. Do we have anybody on the line who would like to speak for or against?
There are none.
All right, hearing nobody, I'm going to close the public hearing. Normally, applicant, this is where we have you have your response. You have an opportunity for response to the public hearing comments. We can just continue on. And commissioners, any other questions you might have?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Key again. And I guess I want some clarification. The setback that we want to issue the variance for 30 feet to the property line, And I guess my question would be, are there any existing buildings other than the four that I'm reading on this print that's at the back of the property where we will maybe violate some of their space? Or would they all meet their own 30 feet setback from the property line? Am I crowding any of your neighbors, or are there no neighbors to crowd?
To the rear of the buildings.
To the rear of the
So if you look at the block 3.D along Louisa Street, you can see the rear neighbors there. There's the one off of Root Street to the east, and then there's also the one along Martin Luther King. Those would be the nearest there. On the other two sites, 3P and 3N, there are not currently any homes behind them. They're at vacant lots.
Okay. And the one on Martin Luther King, I mean, that meets the 30-foot setback anyway. That would be building 31. It's more than a 30 feet setback there on the back of that anyway, right?
So I'm sorry, guys. I kind of got lost in the weeds here. Do we have any buildings that we're looking at granting a setback less than 30 feet that adjoin another occupied property dwelling?
To the rear, it would only be building number 29 with the building that fronts Root Street.
Right.
What is that building?
That is a single family residence.
That makes me feel a little uncomfortable.
Well, Matt, that's the one that's got the 16.4 feet.
Yes.
16.4 setback in the rear, and it's a common space too. And that's the one he was talking about earlier.
Right.
Commissioner Telega, this is Kristen Stevenson, city planner. Can I say something on that?
Of course.
So we wrote in the staff report on that specific case, looking at the parcel, if it were to be used how it's built, which is actually facing Root Street,
right.
The 16.4 is actually more than what the side lot setback is, which is 15 feet. The side lot requirement.
We lost you.
Sorry.
Right, but they've reoriented these so that now it's not a side lot setback anymore, it's a rear.
Correct.
Okay.
Was this a residential parcel always, or was it a commercial parcel that has been granted a variance for housing, like an old commercial corridor on Root Street? I'm just trying to, because that's a short setback even in general, yeah. So I was trying to understand what was there before, if there's nothing there now, yeah, that you're building on. Anyone know, just off the, for the record, or?
It was a residential parcel. Sorry.
Yeah, it was my
Residential parcel, okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's a residential parcel and they took everything and turned it.
And reoriented it, yeah.
Right, right. And that's the only one that's troubling me near that existing home on Route. Other than that, I'm pretty comfortable with the other ones.
Yeah. And I guess this is Commissioner Key again. I guess this is really a opportunity to rebuild this area, because right now it's dilapidated, right?
It's vacant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So to me, it's like a tremendous opportunity to rebuild the area and promote growth in that area.
And I feel the same way, Commissioner. I just have a little pause here, and I'm not saying object, but I have some pause out of the rights of that home en route.
Understand?
This is Commissioner Stebbins. I do have a question, if I could.
Oh, please.
Okay. Is there any safety concerns by these changes, or anything that would be harmful to those residents, is my question. Like fire codes, anything like that, by changing this zoning, would it affect them like that?
I mean, we're within the zoning requirements as far as distance from neighboring buildings. I mean, in an instance where they were side setbacks, the buildings can be as close as 16 feet in these areas. So we're still exceeding that because a side setback requirement is a minimum 6 feet. So with a neighboring lot, we're still further than that requirement.
Right.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was any fire hazards or anything that we would be impeding on.
No.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's saying no because this is the setback we required. If it wasn't a rear setback, it was a side setback, they
Okay.
would be meeting our ordinance and requirements.
All right, thank you.
Just because he's reoriented. Yeah.
All right.
Does anybody know the address on Root Street? I want to look up the parcel.
Commissioner Talgo, Bill Vandercook.
I believe the house, existing building is 909 Route,
Thank
the
you.
one just adjacent.
Anybody else got any other questions for the applicant? Or discussion?
The last question I have, this is Commissioner Key again, is for the applicant. Is there any plans to put a fence along the rear property line, or is that just open space?
At the rear of building 29, there would be a stone retaining wall with an approximate height of 3 feet. And then next on top of that, there would also be a 3-foot fence, a fence of at least a minimum 3 feet on top of the retaining wall for safety.
Okay.
Oh, I see.
Anybody else? 909 Route, so it looks like a vacant home.
Yeah, I was looking at that. Yeah.
I kind of checked myself twice. I went back and forth. Am I looking at this right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Oh, it's got private owner though.
yeah, the whole
Sorry,
area.
it's 1131 Route. Sorry, no. Sorry.
All right.
913 Route is the existing home. And
913?
yes.
The middle of the block, middle of the 909, 913. Looks like a brick
Okay.
home.
Right. And then the other one's an empty lot.
Yeah. And then, yeah.
Whenever this picture was taken, this was boarded up too. It
2015.
looks like it's owned by the land bank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not quite as concerned now.
Yeah.
I didn't mean that to be so flippant. Okay, any other questions for the applicant or applicant? Do you have anything else?
No, I don't believe we do.
Sorry, I actually do. This is Christina Higgins with North Star. I had just, sorry, I get a little confused with the portal, but I had just noticed that it does look like, and I think Kristen can confirm better, but it looks like there might be a house that is behind, I think it's 47, but it looks like there's quite a large backyard for that one. It doesn't look like it's very close at all, but I just wanted to bring that up. I didn't want to, if somebody else looked and saw that, I didn't want to seem like we were being untruthful, but I also don't always trust my eyes. I don't know if somebody else could take a look and see if they're seeing the same thing.
Ari, you want to try and check that out real quick?
Yeah, let me pull it up on Google Earth. On Louisa?
Yeah.
Sorry, nope, on Crosby.
On Crosby.
It would be, yep, it would be behind, I believe, 47, and it looks like the home is, it looks like 311 Crosby, but it does look like there's quite a large backyard. So it's not, doesn't look like a similar situation to the other, but you know, you'd asked about vacant parcels, so I just wanted to bring that up.
Are we talking about the 8-foot setback then? Because we only show, my map only shows Louisa, and I don't show Crosby, which I'm sure must be at the bottom here.
7.
Crosby is a bit further up near Mary. Sorry, I was referring to a different building.
That's all right.
You know, to be honest, any building in this community will be an improvement. And the exchange would be, it may encroach on others' property, but it definitely will stabilize. The density and the infill will definitely stabilize the neighborhood, the benefit to them. So, yeah.
That's my thought too.
Sure, great. Yeah, I just wanted to bring it up. I
No, we appreciate
wasn't
you.
sure if I trusted my eyes.
We appreciate the transparency
Thank you.
Thank you.
and commend you. All right, anybody got any other questions or comments? All right, I'm gonna ask for a motion. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, do you want me to read the motion?
You can't
But,
read a motion. Basically, it's set back to approve the proposed setback variances for the 5 buildings in Clark Commons as presented.
Motion to approve.
I support.
Second.
What's your motion? Can you read it, please? The record?
Commissioner Key, you gonna read it?
You want me to do it?
Go ahead. Yep.
I can do it. Okay.
Commissioner
Okay.
Commissioner
Key.
Telga, Bill Vandercook. I don't know if you can hear me for point of order before it's made, if you don't
Yes,
mind.
please, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Kristen may want to bring something up. Kristen, are you there? KZ, is Kristen on? Is she muted?
No, she's there.
No.
No, Kristen is there. Kristen?
Kristen, did you want to discuss anything prior to a motion?
No, Bill. I'm
Okay.
good.
Okay. I'm sorry, Commissioner Telga.
Nope, better safe than sorry.
Yep.
All right, Jerry, you made the motion, correct?
Well, I will read the motion. I got a question for Mr. Chairman and the team here. You know, last time I read the motion, I read the standards into my motion. Do you want me to read through the standards into the motion? Because everybody have a copy of them. And the
Unless
standards-
it's gonna be just as written, as it's written there, if you want. If you're not gonna abbreviate it, you just have him add that to your motion.
Okay. So with that,
Big
then,
girl,
okay.
it doesn't hurt to read them.
I mean, I don't feel a need to have to read them unless, you know.
We
If
try and
they
do it
don't-
to get supporting evidence so we're not reversed in court.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
Read through the standards.
For all the commissioners, this is Kelly Thompson. If the motion is to deny, then the grounds for denial would be necessary in the motion. If it's to approve as presented, then the standards are not necessary.
Thank you.
So you
Okay.
can do it, but you don't have to.
All right. This is Commissioner Key for ZBA case 20-2237. Whereas North Star Development USA LP on behalf of Clark Common Third LDHA LLC for the parcels located on Mary Street, Crosby Street, and Louisa Street, setback variance for multifamily residential use. I make a motion that we approve the applicant request for a setback variance from Chapter 50, Article 4-B, two-family district, and Article 9-D3, community business district. The setback variance request is to allow for 5 multifamily residential buildings to be built. The subject parcels in Block 3.D for building number 29 are Zone D3, as are the adjacent parcels in the block bordered by Root Street, Louisa Street, Martin Luther King Avenue, and Fifth Avenue. The subject parcels in Block 3.N for buildings number 45, 46, 47 are Zone B, as are the parcels in the block bordered by Mary Street, Crosby Street, Avenue B, and Donald Street. The subject parcels in Block 3.P for building number 48 are Zone B, and the adjacent parcels in the block bordered by Crosby Street, Avenue C, Wood Street, and Donald Street are Zone B and C1, multiple family walk-up apartments. The applicant has option to purchase agreement from the Genesee County Land Bank. The properties are currently vacant, and the applicant intends to use these parcels to build 5 4-unit multifamily rental developments. The proposed building do not meet the rear setback requirement of 30 feet for B and D3 districts. The project is part of the City of Flint Choice Neighborhood Initiative and part of the Greater Clark Commons Phase 3 project. So with, like I said before, with this request, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this request as written.
Who did support that, please?
Commissioner McCaskill?
And do you still support his amended?
Yes.
Okay. All right, do we have any discussion? Okay, let's call staff, let's call roll call vote.
Commissioner Stebbins,
Approve.
Commissioner Hardy,
Approved.
Commissioner McCaskill,
Approved.
Commissioner Jordan, Commissioner Key,
Approved.
Commissioner Ricks,
Approve.
Commissioner Telica,
Approve.
Commissioner Coney,
Approve.
Commissioner Blower. I've read off the road call, Commissioner Telica.
Did we get, I didn't hear Commissioner Blower's vote. She's not here, is she?
That's correct.
All right, well, the motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move down to the city attorney report.
Mr. Chair, this is Kelly Thompson. The only report I have for tonight's meeting is the proposed permanent marijuana ordinance that is, it's been presented to council. It's been read once, so we are awaiting the final reading and vote from city council on that ordinance.
Is there any significant differences between the permanent and the temporary emergency one in effect now?
There are a number of differences. The major difference being that we are opting in to the recreational side of marijuana licensing. We are already doing that in effect through our temporary ordinance. But then we're adding micro businesses and the terminology is escaping me right now. Designated consumption, I believe it is. So those are 2 additional license types that we do not currently issue to businesses, but with the passage of the permanent ordinance, those 2 licenses would be added.
Once this is approved with council, could you share it with our board?
Absolutely. I can email the draft ordinance to the board.
I'd like to see the draft myself for sure.
Of course.
Yeah. Anything else, Kelly?
That's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All right. Old business. We got discussion on the ZBA training materials. I trust everybody's received them. And thank you, Ari, for the help with that. And Bill for doing it. Anybody got questions, discussion, comments? We'll move along. Do we have any other old business? We're moving down to new business. Do we have any new business?
It may be beneficial to talk about setbacks. Someone from the city could talk about the reason for setbacks, why we voted the way we did. At least when we come around to it next time, we can kind of be more educated about our decision we made. But setbacks are generally probably the most often requests of ordinance or variance. So can Bill or Suzanne or someone explain, since we're in the teaching moment of things?
Suzanne, would you like to explain the setbacks?
Hi, sorry, this is Suzanne. I think that it would be helpful if we did, if we wanted to do some teaching and talked about setbacks, we could do a little bit of research and maybe do a presentation to you all, unless you just want generic information on setbacks, and I think Bill can provide that. But otherwise, if you want more detailed information, why setbacks are important, you know, what they're there for in the master plan, what the you know, some of the changes in the setbacks are for aesthetic purposes and density purposes, we could come back and provide you with some more information in a little bit more detail if you'd like that.
Ari, is that what you had in mind? That's what I had in mind.
Yeah, I think so. Like Euclidean versus form-based code or use-based, I think would be beneficial because it's definitely a transition from one to the other. But yeah, I think it would be helpful.
Okay, we could definitely do that. We could put that on the agenda for the next meeting if you'd like, and we could come and do a mini presentation on setbacks and certainly the form-based code, the master plan, some of the changes that are proposed in the draft zoning code, you know, from the existing. We'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And I was going to say, could we add it to the agenda? So thank you so much. We appreciate you volunteering to do that, and I think it'd be very beneficial for everyone.
Well, I have a question, Mr. Chair.
I do too. I bet it was the same one.
Commissioner, this is Commissioner Key again. Suzanne, I was wondering if we ever resolve this. Well, in this training, you're talking about the city's master plan. And I know the city's master plan drives your ordinances that we have, the city ordinances.
Yeah.
I thought we were going forward with a revised set of city ordinances we were taking to the council for the last couple of years to get them approved. And you guys had done a couple of presentations on that, but I never heard where we ended up with that. Did the new?
It wasn't adopted. No,
Zoning
not yet.
order.
No,
Yeah, not the master plan.
no,
Master
it's this. The draft zoning code has not been adopted. What happened, and I know we've talked about this before, but the question comes up frequently, so I'm happy to talk about it again. So the draft zoning code was approved by the Planning Commission, and it was brought forward to the Flint City Council, not the current City Council. It was actually several members that are no longer there, but there was a decision made at that time to deal with just Chapter 50, the medical marijuana ordinance at that time. And so the council at that time determined that they wanted to deal with one chapter versus the entire zoning code, which in retrospect probably made really good sense because they dealt with the marijuana ordinance, the permanent existing medical marijuana ordinance, for about 1.5 years. And so dealing with that, going back and forth, it was a significant lift for staff, for the council, and so the decision probably made a lot of sense. So we were getting ready when they finally adopted the ordinance, the permanent ordinance, we were getting ready to bring the zoning code back in full to the city council when the state legalized recreational or adult use marijuana. At that point, there was a discussion about revising the permanent ordinance, which Kelly just touched on, revising the permanent ordinance for adult use consumption, and that's where that lies right now. So we've had several conversations with council about, and some council members have asked for us to bring the zoning code, the full zoning code, back to them. However, the decision really has been to allow them to finalize the and adopt the permanent a permanent recreational ordinance. Given the length of time, they haven't actually discussed that yet. So there have been a couple, comments, but they really have not dove into that ordinance. And so the thought was to do kind of the same process that we used for the permanent ordinance, finish that, and so we're encouraging them to adopt the permanent recreational marijuana ordinance so that we can then bring the full zoning code. We had started and held a number of community outreach sessions again to remind people what the draft zoning code actually entailed, what changes there were between that draft zoning code and the current ordinance, outdated ordinance that we're operating from right now. We started doing all that. We held several community sessions. We had a couple informational sessions with administration and with city council. And then, we kind of got stuck on the temporary marijuana ordinance again. So we are encouraging them to adopt the permanent recreational marijuana ordinance so that we can bring the zoning code ordinance, draft zoning code back to them and adopt it. That's where we are right now. There is some discussion about whether we want to actually bring the zoning code right now, even before they adopt the permanent recreational ordinance, but there is, it's a pretty heavy lift. And so the thought was that they really need to finalize their dialogue and communication and adoption of the temporary ordinance, and then we will bring the zoning code. And as soon as they do that, we are prepared to bring the draft zoning code back to city council.
Okay. Suzanne, the other question I have is a follow-up to that, right? Is that when we go through these case analysis and we receive the standards and all as purviewed by your planning department, you guys are continuing to use the existing approved zoning codes until you get the new ones approved?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the catch-22 that we're in, is that because the draft zoning code has not been adopted permanently, we have to operate under the current outdated zoning code. And so we tried. I know it's a difficult situation for certainly your board. I know it's tough because many times you're looking at the existing ordinance, recognizing that it really is outdated, that there are things that don't really jive with the master plan. And so sometimes you take those things into consideration as part of your deliberation and your decision making. But technically we are operating under the current zoning code, and those are typically the standards that you use when you make decisions.
Right.
It's an awkward situation. It is, for sure.
For our newer members, is an archaic zoning ordinance. What year is it? 1972, 76?
73.
73. Richard
Yes.
Nixon was
Not Millhouse.
right. Tennessee Valley Mall was in the middle of a farm field, as my father used to say.
Absolutely, we 100% agree with you. And what I would really encourage you to do is to encourage your council people, and Kelly, I think, would back me up on this, encourage your council people to adopt the marijuana ordinance so that we can bring this forward. That is, I think, the best option for all of us. Not saying that that's going to be a quick and easy process, but at least we can start talking about and explaining the benefits of the new zoning code, certainly explaining why operating under you're right, the archaic, outdated zoning code is not in the best interest of the city. There are many projects that are very difficult that people want to move forward that we can't actually do under the old zoning code that we could move forward on with the new zoning code. So I would encourage you to talk to your council people and encourage them to actually adopt the permanent marijuana ordinance.
Suzanne, question. Can the marijuana piece, medical and recreational, be broken out, for lack of a better word, from the master plan so they can vote on the master plan and then they can capitulate about the other part? Because Lord knows when that's going to happen.
Well, that's actually what they did with the permanent medical marijuana ordinance, and that's what took so long for them that's why the zoning code was postponed originally, because they separated out that chapter, and that was actually their decision. They wanted to, because we brought the full zoning code to them, including that marijuana, ordinance, the permanent ordinance, medical marijuana ordinance, and that it was their decision that they wanted to deal with that first. It was timely. It was something that was present. They wanted to deal with that first before we brought the zoning code. So we acquiesced and we did what they asked. And as I said, we were getting ready to bring the zoning code forward in full again when the state legalized recreational marijuana. So we're kind of following the same path. We're certainly willing to have conversations again with them. And Kelly, Kelly and I have had conversations internally about what makes the most sense. But our thought was, just given the amount of conversation that exists at council, and especially right now in this COVID-19 environment, an ordinance generally is not a quick, the zoning ordinance is generally not a quick adoption. So the thought was, let's get them to adopt the recreational permanent ordinance, and then we will bring the zoning code forward. So it actually is separated out right now, Commissioner McCaskill. And so I guess the other option would be to bring them both together at the same time. And that's pretty tough given the level of dialogue that has gone on with the marijuana ordinance. And I find it hard to imagine having that same level of dialogue with two very substantial, very comprehensive ordinances in front of council at the same time. It's not like a pilot ordinance where, even though there's a lot of dialogue about it, it's not something that they can go chapter by chapter by chapter by chapter. There's several chapters in the zoning. We're talking about 300 pages. It's not a quick adoption. So the thought was, let's get them to adopt the permanent ordinance first, and then we will bring the zoning code forward. And that's just, not only is that not only in retrospect, that was council's request, and I think it was probably the right thing to do given how long it took. But, that's the conversation we've been having internally, and I think I agree with that.
Hey, Suzanne, this is Commissioner Key, and I just wanted to follow up on what I asked initially. And the reason I was asking the question is because for this body, which is the ZBA body for Flint, we always got to make sure that we are staying within the boundaries of the law, because we are authorized to make these variances and grant these decisions based upon the law and the boundaries of the law. So when you start talking about zoning ordinances and codes, we can only use the one that's been approved, not the one that's been proposed. Okay. And when we first started out, when I first joined this body, a lot of the analysis that came from the planning staff said, this is based on our proposed codes, which hasn't been approved yet. And it kind of disturbed me a little bit because I can't judge things on what's proposed. As a member of the ZBA, I have to judge things based on what has been approved through the city council. That's what the law reads, right? So I just want to make sure we stay within those boundaries and not get caught up.
And you do. And those are the standards when staff reports are prepared for your review. They look at the existing zoning code, but you are an appellate body, so that is, you have purview. Everything that you do is actually a variance from the existing code. That is your purpose, and so
right.
You have that ability to differentiate, and that's really what I think staff are doing, is trying to walk that line between what is currently adopted and then give you some not flexibility, but at least show where, proposed how this is potentially consistent with the draft zoning code that is, derived from the master plan, because that is your purpose. So they're really, I think, and I know, Kevin, I know you've had that conversation before, Commissioner Key, with Kevin Schrantz and with Adam Moore. And the idea is really to provide you with the information, because you have the ability to provide variances from the zoning code, both current and future. That is your purpose. And so they're really just trying to provide you as much information as possible.
And I'm okay. I just want to make sure we stay there,
And the master plan should inform our decisions on variances. That's why it exists, because that's the future.
Master plan's been dated though, correct?
The master plan, I'm sorry, what?
The master plan has been updated, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. The new
Yes, the master plan. Yeah, the Imagine Flint master plan is the master plan that we are currently operating under right now. It's the zoning code that has not been updated.
Right, and they conflict with each other. Is a lot of, I think, our challenge here, which they won't.
Exactly, they do. That's exactly right.
probably wouldn't even, I know we've had items that came up from us that once the new zoning ordinance is passed, provided passed as it's presented, we wouldn't even see.
Yeah.
I said that for your benefit.
There's many cases, that's exactly right. There's many cases that you wouldn't even need to see because they're consistent. They'd be consistent with the updated zoning code. Many
Right.
cases you see now, they come before you because they're inconsistent with the old, outdated, archaic zoning code. So at some point, when that draft code is adopted, there are some cases that you probably won't even need to hear.
Correct.
Okay.
Make us
Dealing with
obsolete.
Nixon era rules. And downtown was still the place to go for shopping.
True. True, but our goal, right? The choice neighborhood plan in Clark Commons. I mean, we're trying to spur development outside of downtown and continue to rebuild our city citywide. So we talk about incremental development, and this, I think, is a really good example, building north of downtown and ultimately south of downtown so that we can see neighborhoods rebuilt in the entire city of Flint. Downtown is certainly something that we're proud of, the work that's happened downtown, but we want to see that happen across the city.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else before we adjourn? Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
I move
I'd like
that
to
we
make a motion
adjourn.
that we adjourn the meeting.
I just got a motion from Janetta. I need a support from her.
I'll support it.
Forward.
Commissioner
Thank
Stebbins.
you. All those in favor, aye.
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 Both same sign. At 6:59, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Amen.
Thank you.
So long,
Yeah,
everyone.
be blessed.
Have a good night.
Yep.